It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. Eric Dudas here, along with Code Slinger and all-round good guy, Mr. Brian Musker. Brian, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, thanks. I had a little bit of some programming that's actually worked right for a change, so it's cool.
Hey, we could all use a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. It's episode number 9, and this will be posted to the fullythreaded.com website on August 5th. 2010. Hard to believe we got 9 under our belt already, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's pretty amazing.
We had a very positive response to our last episode, and it seems there are a growing number of threadheads out there that tune into the show on a regular basis. It's great to see.
Yeah, and we really like to hear your comments. We pay attention to them, so keep them coming in, okay?
That's right, and we hope that you'll email us at the address ftr@fullythreaded.com. Episode number 9 is a great one. You are not going to want to miss this, and I hope you'll listen to every minute. We're going to get things kicked off with NFDA President Jim Derry. He's going to let us know what's going on with the NFDA these days and give us a preview of the fall meeting coming up in Chicago in September. Next, we'll talk with CEO of QuickScrews International, the outspoken Mr. Greg Wiener. Greg is going to talk about a few things that I don't think we've really broached on the Fully Threaded show yet, and I know you're not going to want to miss it, and you'll find it very exciting, no matter what side of the political aisle you may fall on. Then we'll talk with River Heights Consulting Industrial Distribution Consultant Frank Hurtte. He's got some ideas about better ways to prepare for trade shows, and also he'll be talking about some of his ideas on the process involved in industrial distribution. Plus, a new Gallup poll has come out that Fully Threaded listeners will probably find very interesting, and we'll kick that around towards the end of the show. All in all, sounds like a pretty good one. What do you think, Bri?
Yeah, it's very full. Lots of good content.
That's right. So we'll keep our part of the chit-chat down to a minimum today. But just to remind everybody, we're the people who bring you FastenersClearinghouse.com. the search engine for industrial fasteners. And if you haven't gotten out there, please do. Whenever the need to search and source comes up, it's a free resource for you. There's over 500,000 inventory line items in the database currently, and all you need to do is go out to www.fastenersclearinghouse.com, log on, and you can use the database, and hopefully we can help you find that part you're looking for.
Yeah, and make sure you remember the S, fasteners with an S, clearinghouse.
That's right. Since the last episode, we really saw a resurgence in activity on the search engine. July started off a little bit slow, but the second half was very strong, and thus far in August, we've seen a real uptick. Is that pretty much match what you're seeing, Brian?
Yes. I mean, what we see is sort of interesting. The searches on our site and the drill down very closely follow what is published as activity in the manufacturing or in the industrial part of the United States. That's good and interesting for us.
We're always working to improve the database and to make things better for our users. And what have you been working on since the last episode, Brian?
Well, we've done a pretty major change in some of our fastener items, and that change is to introduce a new commodity type. This has come about as a result of some of the members talking to us and suggesting that the inserts have not really been placed well on our site. And the truth is that we never really knew where to put them. We were taking leads from other places that listed them under nuts, but it never seemed right, and finally we decided to create a new commodity type of inserts and then reclassify all of the inserts we had in terms of these new ones. So we have gone from just the 2 different types we had. We've now externally threaded inserts, and we always had rivet nuts, but key locking inserts. We've introduced 5 new types of, or reclassified as 5 new types of inserts. So hopefully this will be more useful to our users and members. And if you have any suggestions on how we could do this more logically, then don't hesitate to give us a call.
So this has largely been a major recategorization effort then, is that right?
Yes. Well, these things are not, once the site's been around for a few years, there's lots of links to these previous classifications we've had to deal with so that the system knows to redirect things. So we've had to put all those in place first. And most of this was done over the last weekend. And this has been a lot of work.
And in addition to that, there's also another pretty major project that's been going on, isn't there? And that's related to the source finder system.
Yes. This is also in response to our members asking us, and some of the members have suggested that they would like to be able to specify whether they get source finder requests from other distributors only or from anyone. So we've introduced this as another option that you can set when you are putting your preferences for source finder. And we encourage people to go and update those. And the logic to actually split off we'll probably activate that in a couple of weeks. We'd prefer our members to update their preferences first.
Just to take a moment to explain the source finder system to people who might not be familiar with it, in the Fasteners Clearinghouse database, you can search for inventory, and if you ever come up with a goose egg, in other words, you do a search, nothing comes up, you're offered the opportunity to create a real-time RFQ, and that goes off to all of the Fasteners Clearinghouse members who opt into this optional system.
Now, that RFQ we call a source finder, okay?
That's right.
And if you're a member and you're logged in and using the system as a member, you're able to create these requests at any time. On the main public site, you have to have done a search first, okay?
So this new enhancement offers members another level of granularity, and it allows them really to just receive the RFQs, the source finder RFQs, that they feel are most appropriate for their business.
Right. And, we already have other selection criteria in place. Some of our members deal only in metric, and some deal only in US Imperial fasteners. And so the members are able to select that they only want to see source finder requests for metric, or they only want to see, or they don't really care. They'll take them for both, which is more common.
Well, this is going to be a useful enhancement, and I hope all FCH members will get in there and modify their source finder profile so they receive the source finders of their preference.
Right. And you remember how you do that? You log into your account, and in the settings, there's a drop-down that comes down. One of them says, update my source finder settings, and if you click on that, it'll take you to the page that will allow you to do it.
Very simple. I'd like to remind everybody, again, that you can email us anytime at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. We really look forward to your input.
And also, just to keep you aware, you are able to, on the Fully Threaded page, on the right-hand side, there's a link that you click on. It's the iTunes link. That will take you to the iTunes website. And also, at the same time, it will start up iTunes on your own PC and subscribe you through to iTunes. So the next time you plug your iPod or your iPhone into your computer, the subscription will be recognized, okay?
I mentioned earlier that the last episode seemed to be pretty popular, and the number of people who are subscribing seems to grow each episode, and that's a great thing. And at the same time, there are still a lot of people who are just terrified of this technology, Bri.
Right, I know, but it's not that frightening, really. I mean, the fact is you're under complete control of it, and some people probably are not really aware of the fact that, you can certainly listen to these podcasts on your iPhone or your iPod, and that's the easiest way, but the fact is you can listen on your own computer too. But you don't have to. It's not a case of having to sit and listen to the whole thing. You can select which bits you want to listen to, and you can turn the sound on or off. Or it's entirely under your own choice. It's a very easy technology. That's why it's become so popular.
Well, I think most people discover the show. Either they get one of our emails, or they hear about it from a friend, or maybe they read about it on the Fasteners Clearinghouse.com news page. And they just stream it off the website.
Yeah, right. And that's the way probably most of the people who I talk to listen to it. I mean, that's the immediate thing. But subscribing and listening to it offline on your iPhone or your iPod, that's the way you can listen to it when you're on your workout or you're on the cardio machine or whatever. I mean, it's just an easy way of doing it.
Right, and I think that's what's happening. The reality of it is that many people are still beginning to learn how to use this on-demand new media. And that's a subject that we could talk about quite a bit, but it's one of these things that if you're already listening to Fully Threaded, you really don't need to hear this sermon.
Right, that's true. Yeah, we're talking to the converted, okay? Preaching to the choir.
Well, so folks, if you have any thoughts on that and how you get the word out beyond who's already listening, we'd love to hear those.
Yeah, what's one of the things we all are aiming to do? It's to try and introduce the fastener industry in general to newer technologies. It's something they've been very resistant to for some time.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurrent theme on the show.
Right.
And speaking of other recurrent themes, I don't know if you saw this or not, I got a flyer in the mail the other day. It was from NIFS people, and they're getting everything set up for the show in November out in Las Vegas. And one of the things that they're doing that's new this year, don't know if you heard this, is a pub crawl on the show floor.
Wow, I wonder if this has anything to do with your constant requests for free beer.
Well, I would never take credit for something like that, of course.
Okay, right, of course not.
However, it appears that it's a reality, and I wonder how many companies are going to jump in on this. I hope a lot.
Perhaps other people have been asking Mike about the beer thing.
Well, you can't blame them, really. But it's an idea whose time has come, apparently, and we'll see how that works out in November, won't we?
That's right.
Be interesting to see if people report maybe more sales will happen on the show floor. Who knows?
Right. Or maybe no one will know. Okay, we won't go there.
And there's other news related to our favorite frosty malted beverage in the fastener world headlines these days, and that is our favorite fastener blogger, traveling salesman, over at fastenerblog.net, recently announced his new beer label for the fastener industry, and it's called Old Rusty Bolt.
Right, I saw that.
What do you think of that? Sounds thirst-quenching, huh?
That sounds really, really good, that does.
Well, we'll have more to say about that in the next episode, so we'll leave that as a little bit of a cliffhanger. But it's good to see a little bit of beer creativity coming at us from all directions. That's all I have to say. Based on all the other news that's out there, I'll take it.
Right, right.
Well, we have a great lineup on episode 9 today, and I thank you again for tuning in. We really do appreciate your listenership. And why don't we get right to it now with our first segment, which is NFDA President Jim Derry.
Right.
Jim Derry is the president of the NFDA, and he joins us again. Jim, welcome back to Fully Threaded Radio.
Well, it's great to be back.
Hey, you were on episode 5 a couple months ago, explaining some of the things that are going on with NFDA and some of the developments that are happening. And since then, of course, we made the announcement on the previous episode of Fully Threaded about some of the things that are going on in connection with the partnership between NFDA and Fasteners Clearinghouse. And, of course, we've got the ball rolling with that. It's good to have that underway.
Yeah, the entire NFDA, the board and the staff are excited about taking the relationship with Fastener Clearinghouse kind of the next level and really bringing a new valuable service to our members that just allows them to more effectively identify and source and find the right place for identifying the right source for parts. So it's unique, it's specific to the NFDA, and we think it's a value that our members will enjoy.
That's right, and we've been calling around and getting the roster on board. If you're an NFDA member listening and you haven't received contact from us yet, don't worry, it's coming soon. We're working our way through the list, and it's a pretty painless procedure to get signed up. Actually, we handle most of the heavy lifting, and really all you need to do is get the email and follow the link to your account, and it's fairly straightforward once you get in there.
Yeah, Eric, I just spoke actually today with the gentleman on our team that's really responsible for the overall inventory issues, and he indicated that the process was very straightforward. So he's working on that for our inventory, and indicated the process appears to be very, very straightforward. So we're anxious to get our data in and loaded into the system, and we're also our customer service folks are using the tool now to identify parts. They're getting a jam on a part here, part there. With the kind of the overall volume picking up, we're finding cases where we're out of stock because there's a spike in usage. The FCH is a great tool to identify kind of an emergency fill-in source for maybe some non-standard, semi-standard kind of items. So our sales team is using that now. It's been a good tool.
Perfect. It sounds like we're hitting the bullseye with that one.
Well, we hope so. Selling the obsolescence and slow moving in some of the items that maybe hasn't had, some of the items that haven't had the activity levels that we anticipated. Maybe there's some excess of it. We think it'd be great to get some other folks buying some of those parts, and we think the FCH will be a great way to do that.
That's right. Well, NFDA members, stay tuned. We'll be keeping you advised on this as we get things rolled out, and again, that's forthcoming. Now, there's another tool that NFDA is promoting for its membership, and that's the iLumen tool. I don't know if everyone involved with NFDA is actually already on board with iLumen, or really what the status is. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, iLumen is it's a really powerful financial modeling and benchmarking tool. It's widely used throughout many industries, and candidly, the NFDA membership uses it, but not nearly as fully as we had hoped. So what iLumen does is it allows you really two main things. It allows you to look at your company's financial performance and see trends, look at it over time. So you can really, it's a very nice dashboard, let's say, to see and analyze your own financial performance. But the other part of it that's really powerful is the comparative feature where iLumen gets data from many companies and then allows you to compare your performance, your, let's say, sales per person, or your inventory turns, or your accounts receivable aging. It allows you to compare critical and important financial metrics with other companies in your specific section of the marketplace. Obviously, all the data is completely confidential. You can't, you don't know whose data you're comparing against, but it's real-time, month-by-month comparison of your financial performance against your peers. And the real advantage, we think, to offering this iLumen program to all the regional associations is that it just puts more data into this benchmarking system. Obviously, the more data that's in there, the more accurate the benchmarks are, and then the more precisely you can try to compare your company's performance to organizations that are similar to yours from a size and a geographical perspective. So I'd say it's a great tool, and it has been underutilized, partially because there haven't been as many people in it as we had hoped. So more people aren't joining because there's not as many people in it, and the comparisons aren't as useful. So we think this will be a great way to expand the tool for the NFDA members, and it's a great way for the NFDA to continue to reach out to the regional associations and do things on a more collaborative and cooperative aspect.
Right. That does sound very consistent with your stated mission. Let me ask you, what type of investment of time does it take for the average company to kind of get the ball rolling with iLumen? What do they have to do to get going?
Eric, that's a great question. There's really two components of it. One is the initial setup, and that's pretty straightforward. Actually, I was just talking to our CFO on that because he did it for our company. The initial setup took a couple hours, and basically it's kind of mapping the output of our financial information into the iLumen website, and that took a little bit of time up front, and iLumen pretty much steps you through that, and it's real helpful. Once that mapping component really is established, the monthly updates is about a 15-minute process. So it's very, very straightforward. So, there's a little bit of work up front on an ongoing month-to-month basis, or some companies update it quarterly. It's a very small investment in time to have your data uploaded into this iLumen network.
It sounds like something everyone should get involved in if they have access to it.
We think so. Our company used it for years, and we think the ability to see how we are doing compared to our peers in the industry when changes happen, right? Raw material prices are going up, lead times are going out, the volumes are going up or down. How effectively are we managing our organization to adjust to the changing times? And it's a pretty good way to see, again, real time, month to month, how we're doing compared to people that in the same industry that are dealing with the same issues.
Sure. Now, in your conversation there, you mentioned outreach to some of the regional associations, and there's word out that the upcoming fall NFDA meeting is going to actually be including MWFA. Is that true? What are the details with that?
Yep, the NFDA has had one of our main meetings in Chicago after the past bunch of years, probably 5 or 6 years. We call it the ESPS. It's the Executive Sales and Planning Sessions, and it's been a real popular meeting for the NFDA. And essentially, we create a format to allow manufacturers and master distributors to have one-on-one meeting with fastener distributors. So, through the course of a day, we'd probably schedule 10 or so half-hour segments in the meeting location. And it's been in Chicago because it's centrally located. It's easy to get to if you're flying. There's a lot of companies that can drive there. And again, part of our mission is in strategic plan of the NFDA is to reach out to the regionals, and we think this is a great way to basically allow the people of the Midwest Fastener Association to participate in a part of the meeting. So we think it's a Chicago-based organization. Actually, both the NFDA and the Midwest are both based in Chicago. So we think it's a great way to bring more people to the meeting and allow, again, this collaborative, cooperative effort to continue.
Details of what you're explaining, of course, are available on the NFDA website, and I'll just let everyone know that can be found at www.nfda-fastener.org. And that's the NFDA website that contains a lot of the information on this. Is the meeting then open to non-NFDA or MWFA members, Jim?
The main meeting, the ESPS session, is really focused on NFDA members, and there's a speaker and some networking opportunities on the day before, on Tuesday the 14th, that the Midwest Fastener Association members are invited to. There's an afternoon program, really powerful speaker, a panel discussion, and a networking session on Tuesday the 14th, and that's the section of the meeting that the Midwest Fastener Association members are eligible to attend, and the NFDA members are going to participate in the sales and planning sessions on Wednesday the 15th.
Got it, and that's September 14th and September 15th, 2010.
Hard to believe it's right around the corner. It's amazing how fast time is flying. The kids are talking about going back to school, and we're thinking about an NFDA meeting in Chicago. It must be fall. I think that's happening too fast.
It's true. It seems like just a couple of weeks ago we were in San Antonio.
Exactly. You're right.
Well, Jim, appreciate you being on with us again and keeping listeners advised. We hope to make this a somewhat regular feature as we keep fully threaded listeners abreast of what's unfolding with NFDA.
Well, Eric, I appreciate the chance to be a part of the Fully Threaded. It's great. I think it's good for the industry and it's good for our association, so we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it.
Coming up next, Greg Wiener of QuickScrews International on Fully Threaded.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
Hi, this is Terry Bastian with Fasteners First, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We're joined now by Greg Wiener. He's the CEO and big boss over at QuickScrews International. They operate out of Livermore, California. Greg, welcome to Fully Threaded.
Hi, Eric. Hey, Brian.
Well, thanks for joining us. We really do appreciate it. You're a guy who has a lot to say, and I've talked to you on several occasions in the past, seen you at some of the shows and so forth. And listeners can see your website at quickscrews.com. But why don't you set the table for us? Let us know a little bit what's QuickScrews all about.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, QuickScrews International Corp has been in business 23 years. We have 2 locations, one in California, one in South Carolina, 2 warehouses. And we're an importer of specialty small fasteners for the general woodworking and cabinet trades, furniture. We do expand out into some specialty ordering, other type items overseas, but that's our main focus. We sell through distribution as well as to end users direct, and we've been around a long time.
And you're really focused on the cabinet and furniture industries, aren't you?
That's correct. That takes up about 97% of our product line, to be honest with you, yes.
And how did you come to focus on those areas?
Well, I originally came out of the nail and staple industry myself. I was calling on local cabinet shops pretty much 25 years ago was when I started in the industry itself, and I just kind of saw that miscellaneous products seemed to be an area of interest. I kind of wasn't really cut out to work for somebody else, so I decided to take advantage, start my own little distribution business. And, we morphed out of, an everyday supplier of miscellaneous goods like nail, staples, tape, glue, and screws, and evolved into a importer of specialty screws over the course of the years. That process took about the first 7 years of our company's life. And the last 16 has been trying to perfect it.
So how close to perfection are you then? Okay. Now, the specialty screws, these are the ones that probably have, are these the sort of the strange ones that you put your cabinets and things together with, or are these for commercials for people?
Yeah, what's special about them really is before we came along, there were very few companies concentrating on fasteners for wood. Typically what was being used was drywall screws and sheet metal screws. Now, notice that neither one of those actually say wood in them. And so the industry itself, the woodworking industry, the cabinet industry, really wasn't being serviced directly through marketing and through product differentiation. We came along, we identified that niche, we understood it, and built a product line around it. So I would say this, that they are all commercial-grade fasteners that are readily available every day in the marketplace, but they're relatively unknown outside the world sphere of, cabinet makers, garage, weekend warrior guys, and, people who are interested in learning about the best products for an industry.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that when we set up our nomenclature and Fasteners Clearinghouse, we agonized over these different types who were being sent to us originally, even by non-specialty people like yourself. And we didn't quite know how to classify some of these things, and you could argue we still don't, okay?
Yeah, well, it's really hard. Even the IFI won't classify them. The IFI says they're too small a category worldwide to warrant inclusion in their book. That's a real problem for the fastener industry, but that just makes us more responsible to making sure the quality control is in place, the specification and standards are in place, so that we can assure our customers ultimately, and this is important in the industry overall, of really, putting out a standardized product the same way every single time.
Right. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Well, people are looking for the QuickScrews brand, and we can attest to that. We look at the Fasteners Clearinghouse search logs on a frequent basis, and we can tell you that. You participate in the Fastener Show each year. Are you also involved in some specialty shows that deal with the woodworking industry?
We have a very big international show held once a year in alternating venues. This year, it's in Atlanta, which it is in even-numbered years. It's called IWF, which is the world's largest woodworking show. And typically, we've been going there now, well, this is our 11th time over, that's a 22-year period. And then on the odd years, they have the same type of show out here. Now it's in Vegas. So those are actually our primary shows. It's what we are really geared into. We have an opportunity to meet all of our distributors and end-user customers, and also to introduce anything new we're doing at that point in time.
Got it. Let me ask you, what trends do you see right now, either in your geographic area or in your area of focus or in the fastener industry at large?
I do try and pay attention a lot what's going on here, and I think that we're seeing some interesting times, and I think the economy itself and politics are making a huge impact on our industry. The recession was very difficult. We are related to home construction. Obviously, that market has been pummeled in the recession. I will honestly say I just don't see how in the future we are ever going to see the type of home construction and home building we saw in the last 20 years. I really feel that the marketplace is going to be radically different. There's simply too many shadow home foreclosures, and the big developers they'll sit on their property before they'll build it, no cost or no profit, that's for sure.
Well, that's a bit of a dismal view. I mean, I was going to ask you a question about this because on your page you say that you are at the moment in a booth that is reminiscent of the size you started off 20 years ago when you went to this first show, a 10 by 10 booth.
Yeah.
Do you think the economy has sunk back, relative to the area, your sector?
Well, unfortunately, in our microcosm of a world, we're looking at numbers relative to what we saw in 2002 and 2003. That's how far back we've pulled. It's been significant. It's been an extremely difficult time. We spent 15 months simply on financing. You hear the anecdotal stories. They're real. We had to completely restructure our financial situation here. Mm-hmm. And it was imposing. I've been with a major national bank for 11 years, never an issue, never a problem. And I was basically shown the door and said, we don't really care how much money we made off you in the past. You're just not the type of guy we want to lend money to right now. It was tough. That was tough to take.
Yeah.
So that environment, when demand dropped overnight approximately 45%.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at that kind of drop, even if you had decent returns of 5 to 7% growth, that still takes you 8 or 9 years to get that back.
Oh yeah, no. We saw part of that. Now clearly, the overall market has not dropped as much as your particular sector, but it was worrying for us. And we were at the time. This is in last year. We were going through thinking, what on earth's happening? Maybe our Google presence is going bad. What's really happening? Of course, what was really happening was the industry was falling apart. And
there's a lot of challenges. That's true.
Now, the other way of looking at it, of course, is that maybe, now you're much more concerned about the costs and going to a 10 by 10 booth. Well, that's lovely. That's very good. Maybe you and all of us got a little bit careless in the meantime.
There's no doubt when, you're 100% right, because the way I look at it, and I've analyzed the past a lot, how did we get here, what happened, I'm a very aggressive individual, so I'm not going to just sit here and I may have some gloomy predictions of the economy itself, but that doesn't mean I'm not working triple time over to figure out how to still make a lot of money and how to grow and all that good stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have to really look at our past and understand it to understand how to go forward. In the past, we were extremely leveraged, and easily 85 to 95% of our growth was leverage growth, managed leverage growth, which basically meant I was borrowing money to hire people to grow my sales. I mean, that's really what we were doing.
Right.
And it peaked, and then when the crash hit, and it was like, it was like a really advanced game of, walking around the chairs and trying not to be the person without the chair.
Right.
Right, when the music stopped. Right. I mean, that's kind of like what the credit game was all about.
Yeah.
The credit stopped, and, that was in November of 2008. In January of 2009, you didn't put in a new plan. You weren't going to be around in January of 2010.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And we put in a new plan, and part of that new plan was to strip back the company, go back to some of its bare basics, reduce its cost to a point where no matter, what, we would go down to a level where we knew that those cuts we made in 2009 would work through 2011 based on a bare minimum revenue base that appeared achievable back then.
Right.
And so in going forward, we're interested in growing again, but the key caveat there is we don't want to grow leveraged. And so that requires a little bit more patience, a little bit more strategy, and a completely different philosophy in how you manage your costs and your revenues.
Isn't it interesting? I remember listening to my grandparents talking, who of course lived through the Depression and always talking about doing everything with cash. I mean, here it was in the 80s, and they were afraid to carry plastic, and I always used to laugh at them.
Yeah, well, sometimes our grandparents know a lot more than we do. That's for sure. We really, this was I think it was a good wake-up call for business, but part of our problems are clearly recession-related. There's a huge issue with fulfillment coming in from overseas right now. Has to do with the recession. The long time it took where, we were all scaling back here in America and not ordering products. Well, that meant factories, lines, productions, key goods, raw materials, they're all being cut back.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just build those back up right away. I mean, for example, you can't book a vessel right now easily. Why can't you book a vessel? Because 18, 20 months ago, the ship companies looked at their projections, looked at their loads, and said, we don't want this many ships in the water. Let's put them into dry dock and maintain them and fix them up, right? So they pulled them out. Well, dry dock is 18 months, 20 months. Business picks up, not enough vessels, can't carry enough containers. Now we can't get containers because they're all sitting in the ports here because there's nothing really going back out. Very difficult problem for fulfillment. You've got the dollar problem with the yuan or RMB. Government is pushing China to raise the valuation. That's going to happen. That'll make our goods more costly. It's not the best scenario for us. Chinese government decides to limit the amount of electricity manufacturers can have this summer and are enforcing a mandatory 2-day shutdown.
I hadn't heard that.
Mandatory 2-day shutdown a month where they just cannot work. Nobody heard it. We didn't hear it until this month, and we only heard it through a third party by accident, honestly. I don't think anybody's supposed to be telling anybody.
Well, that's a bit of a radical idea, isn't it? I mean, it's...
Well, when you're dealing with a communist country, you're going to get radical ideas.
Well, in terms of the actual implementation, right, but I mean the objective behind it, I mean maybe it has something to do with, of course, the diminishing demand, but the drop in the raw materials. I mean, they're trying to keep the steel price buoyed somehow, right?
I think they're trying to keep prices a little bit elevated. But what I think the government's trying to do is actually slow down their economy. That's what the government wants. They don't care about pricing. They care about the growth of their economy. And one easy way to slow down their economy is to tell manufacturers you can't work. That's their clean energy bill at work.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this, Greg. We've talked about this on the past couple of episodes. Over the last couple of quarters, demand has been rising, and it's been attributed to companies replenishing their inventories. Are you seeing this? And do you think that we're actually just seeing inventory replenishment, or are we moving beyond that? And are we actually seeing an increase in demand due to other forces?
That's a great question. I actually think in this case, I'm a little bit more optimistic than that point of view. I actually believe that we did see some uptake in January of this year. It's been real. We are carrying a much bigger backload. Now, once again, most of that I'm going to attribute to the lack of fulfillment. However, if we carry forward those numbers, our numbers would look pretty good. If I could actually ship the goods I have, our numbers would look pretty good over last year's numbers. So I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's more than inventory replenishment. I believe there was some things going on in maybe January through, well, even right now, we have seen an uptick in orders. But I think it's more than inventory replenishment. Once again, just because major, massive home building isn't going on, your 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 tract projects, that doesn't mean people aren't building houses every day. They're building them. There's no question there's new house building, and there's remodeling going on all the time. And we do just as well if a guy remodels as if he builds new, quite honestly, because what are you going to remodel? You remodel your kitchen, your bathroom, or your garage, and that means new cabinets. So we don't really struggle when those numbers are equal. It was just when the new numbers crashed so much that whatever was going on in remodeling couldn't cover it. So no, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I just can't really tell because I can't get my fulfillment where I want it to be.
So, I mean, and you said earlier that the housing market's never, ever going to be the same again. But at some stage, the vacant houses will either be torn down or something will happen to them because things just don't stand still for that long.
Correct. There has to be some intervention. There's just too many. I mean, the shadow inventory, which is basically the amount of foreclosed properties held by banks that aren't on the market, is well in excess of 2 million homes nationwide.
Yeah.
With that kind of shadow inventory, large tract building is just, I don't believe, is going to be the wave of the future, which is what, if you look at the West Coast and you look at states like Nevada and California, which had huge swaths of open land, it was very easy to come in and buy that land inexpensively and, project out 50 years and then put in massive communities. But I don't know if we're going to see that. The trend is people have been leaving California, not necessarily coming to it as much. And if you look at the Texas market, which is one of the fastest growing markets in the United States, because they have basically no zoning laws, you just see a completely different type of building going on out there. It's just completely different. They're basically, you can have multi-million-dollar homes next to a shanty shack.
Right.
And then there's a bowling alley next door. So
right.
Texas has got a whole different thing going on down there. But yeah, that's notwithstanding. I think those are absolute truisms.
Yeah, the Texans would have probably say they've always had something completely different going on down there.
Well, you know what they say about Texans, right?
Hey, I lived there for the first years I came to America.
Welcome to America, really.
So
that's a good indoctrination.
Right. So for you, though, these houses, just say the ones that are one could argue that there were too many houses built anyway, okay, and so there's going to be a problem. We're all sitting in a little bit of the problem left over from unbridled building. But a lot of those houses at some stage when someone says, oh, we're going to try and sell this now, and someone, whenever, in a year's time or 2 years' time, they will then need repairs to bring them back up to living standards again.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, you have to understand, like if you take California as an example, that may not be actually true. You've got I read some numbers the other day that said basically in California, approximately 50% of the mortgage holders are underwater. And so these are people who own homes. They're not been foreclosed on. Their valuation is upside down. But they may not have they may have a 25-year loan or a 30-year loan and may not need to refinance, but they're just looking at it and they're saying, why would we do this? Why would we stay here? This home will never be worth what we have to pay for it. So there's a whole mentality out there of people walking away from new homes just simply because it's not because they can't get a mortgage that they have to refi. It's simply because they're paying on a mortgage that's twice what the value of the home is. Real problem. So they may leave that home. It's not distressed. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not worth what the mortgage was. I mean, that's a real big problem here in California.
Probably in parts of Chicago too. I mean, the history of the world is that these problems have existed in the past, and we've just all forgotten about them. But somehow they've got weathered. Okay, I mean, this isn't the only building boom America's ever seen.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. Now, the problem is that there's a lot of people who think that the response to the crisis was not a good one, not a smart one.
But I agree with you. We'll come back to that because I'd like to go into those things a little more depth a little bit later in the show here.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the e-commerce site that you're operating off of your website at www.QuickScrews.com. I know you were an early adopter of web technology, and you've put a lot of thought and a lot of time and effort into this site. It's become a cornerstone of the business for you, actually. Tell us a little bit about it, and how's it all going for you?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. I am proud of my e-commerce site. First of all, it's been up now and acting and working regularly every day for approximately 8-9 years now. So I think we were ahead of the curve. And the real purpose of the e-commerce site, just to kind of lay some background here, was we always felt that as a national company, we wanted our customers to always be able to get information from us. And clearly we can't work, 4 in the morning till 5 at night. So that we can be here every second of the day to answer, our East Coast customers' questions as well as our West Coast customer questions. So the development of e-commerce was really there to support the customers who effectively, if they get in at 8 a.m., that's 5 o'clock in California where our corporate headquarters is, and generally there's nobody here. We'd like them to be able to get their information, and so we developed e-commerce with that intent in mind. The back-end side of the benefit that actually occurred out of it is over the years, it's become such an effective tool for customers that we effectively get an extremely small amount of customer service calls. And customers are constantly going online, checking stock, checking their price, placing the order online if they choose to. They don't have to. They can reprint their own invoices. And we just think these tools all make our customers just more efficient. That's our goal. If we can offer things, and I think anybody in the industry feels this way, if you offer things that have value to somebody, then that takes you beyond the level of what's the price of your product. And let's face it, in our industry, we are the commodity sellers. Okay, we sell screws, bolts, nuts, washers. That's a commodity in the big scope of the real world. And so we have to differentiate ourselves like anybody else. We chose electronic differentiation. I can tell you that a good 60 to 70% of our customers every single day go online and check status on their orders, parts, pricing, and it's great. We get a lot of good feedback on that.
That's fantastic. I know you study the metrics a lot, and you study the statistics. You watch that very closely. I'm curious, how many revisions have you made to the site? I'm talking major revisions now since 2001 when you launched this thing.
That's a great question because you're absolutely right. One thing's great about business and being business a long time. If you're in business a long enough time, you get to not only make mistakes, but you get to fix the mistakes you make, and then you get to warn people not to make those mistakes. I'm not that bright a guy, but I'm a guy who's made enough mistakes to learn how to do things right now. Okay.
Man after my own heart.
Yes. When we first came out, we made the mistake that most people make when they come out, and they hire a graphic artist to do their website, which makes their website look cool. It's got all the flash. It's got all the animation. Oh, boy, you got the great pictures, and everybody loves all that. The problem with it is when you use a graphic artist versus a programmer is there's not a lot you can use the site for. And so what happens is all that kind of programming goes to waste because it doesn't give you any traction in terms of profile on the web itself. And so we had to learn that. We made that mistake. We were heavy graphics. We didn't really understand the interconnectivity of the web and how you can build your own traffic. And so after quite a while going through, we actually went through with the graphic designers. We went through 3 versions just with them. And then back, I think now, it's hard, but I want to say about 3 years ago, I decided to go a completely different way. I wanted to launch a more interactive site with more ability for customers to interact and really to change the format into being able to get more profile on the web itself. Which meant using different type architecture and programming, using meta tags to make sure you're flagged everywhere so the little web spiders can come find you. And then the key portion there was adding the blogs. The reason I added blogs wasn't because I like to see myself write stuff and pontificate. It was really because I was told one of the greatest things you can do on your website to increase your web profile is to change your content frequently. And to me, that was easy because, I do have a lot of opinions, so I figured, hey, I could write new opinions every month. And that would be changing my website frequently, and that would bring fresh content to the site, which would bring spiders to the site, which would ultimately then bring a higher value in the site and thus get up higher and higher into the search engines where you're starting to pop up every time. So 4 or 5 iterations. We added our 6th iteration this year, and that was the addition of a online store.
And what is E3 commerce? You mentioned that on the side. I don't actually know what that is.
Well, the E3 commerce is for the wholesale customers. That's where the wholesale customers get a password and they get their account numbers, and they can go in and see all their activity. We have a tremendous amount of distributors around the United States, and so all of our wholesale customers who are interested in any electronic activity get a wholesale password, and they use E3 to do exactly everything. E3 is like an internal mirror of my own accounting, of my entire system. So they see invoices, they see stock, they see their price. So that's used by wholesale, and that's been up for many, many years. And its growth is phenomenal every year. It's in terms of growth, we've measured the growth of online orders, and every year, 10, 15% more. So it's very, very popular amongst the wholesale customers.
Well, you've been a leader in that part of the business, that's for sure.
Well, I figured out maybe 11 years ago, a small company, we have to figure things out. And I was calculating the amount of time it took to print an invoice, mail an invoice, file an invoice, move an invoice from a current file to an old file, move the old file out into the warehouse, and then take the old file and shred it. And I once figured out that I estimated that took administratively approximately 18 hours a week. So 11 years ago, we bought a fax module program and basically told the customers, we're not mailing invoices. We're faxing them to you. And that kind of started the technology phase of this company. We just flat out said, you will get a faxed invoice the night we ship.
Right.
Now we can fax, we can email. We do multiple different things.
I was going to ask you, you copy with an email these days, right?
It's up to the customer. The customer chooses the method. They can either get it by fax, they could get it by email, or they could get it by both. Makes no difference. It's a one-time setup, and then it's just an automated process.
The point is you're paperless.
Yeah.
We try and be as paperless as possible. We don't like using paper, and even though I'm not a liberal, we like to save a few trees.
Right. So you would have seen then in this time an interesting change in people probably using faxes less now and emails more. Do you see that?
I think we actually fax more than email the invoices, but I just think that's a matter of individuals in companies just saying, why change something that's going fine?
Well, come on, look at it logically. You're dealing with the woodworking industry here. They have a wanton disregard for trees.
Right.
That's true. That is true. That is true. I always laughed when the tree huggers kind of were like, they're going to cut down all the trees. Let's think about this. If you're in the business of selling lumber, don't you want a continual supply of lumber? Why would you be the one who destroyed the tree industry? That doesn't make any sense. It never made any sense to me. You think Weyerhaeuser has more at stake about keeping the tree industry alive?
Right. Right.
That's their business. They're not going to be the ones that kill it. They're not going to do it. Yeah.
Especially with this abundance of CO2 around,
God, please don't get me started on climate change. I'm sorry. Really? Do we want to get involved in that conversation?
Well, it makes a good segue into discussing something that you brought up a little while ago, which is the commentary that you're putting onto the homepage of your site. Some of this stuff, I got to say, Greg, it's great stuff. I've recommended it to many people, and I'd like to hear some comment on it from you, just in terms of you're putting it out there, you're flying your flag. I know it's costing you something. What is it costing you, and how'd you make the decision to kind of go this direction?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and it's a fair one, because even some of my closest peers have questioned basically, what are you doing, Greg? Here it is. Here it is. I decided that on half my blog I would talk about quick screws, and the other half of the blog I would talk about what I believe to be current important events that affect people, not just in our industry, but all around, and they generally are subjects that are kind of normally not talked about in business. I do talk about the politics, what my politics are. It's a risk, and I felt that it was a risk worth taking because I'm worried about the direction of our country. And I know there's a lot of people like me. I travel around the country a lot talking to people face to face, so I know there's a lot of, conservative people out there. But I feel that our voices weren't being heard, and I just needed to voice really my concerns. I would say because we have a free and open comment section, I've been very fortunate. The comments in favor run about 20-1
Wow.
in favor versus against. So I think our industry is very conservative. I had an interesting scenario. I don't know if you caught it, but there was kind of a woman who had told me repeatedly she would no longer buy from us. But I thought it was interesting that she told me that, but she kept coming back to the site to read my stuff to tell me she's not buying from us. So
Right.
It was kind of weird, but I respected her opinion, and then I wrote, and I said, this is what's great about America. In America, if you own your own company and you put up a website, guess what? You get to talk about what you want. And if you own your company and you don't like what I talk about, you don't have to buy from me. And that's what's great about America. And I actually wrote that in the blog. And I said, I think it's great. I think it's great that her and I had a difference of opinion, and she's decided to make a decision based on that difference. And I have to live with that decision. And that's what happens. But I think overall, it's so important now. I'm so concerned about what's going on out there that I have to voice myself. I really do.
And I agree with you 100%. I'd like to get back to, clearly from reading your commentary, that you've got something in mind here. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to realize what you're hoping to see in November. How do you see that people can affect this? I mean, I think one of the biggest problems is everyone's given up. Most people are so annoyed at the largesse that the government in Washington has got used to, and almost nothing that anyone does has any effect. They're immune to.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I have some very positive feelings towards the future, and here's why. I was just talking about this with somebody else this morning. One of the things that I think is happening that politicians don't understand because they're politicians, the media doesn't understand because they're the media, there's another reason that businesses are sitting on almost $2 trillion in cash on the sidelines. Yes, of course, uncertainty. You hear that all the time. Small business doesn't know what's going to happen. I don't know if that's true. We are kind of uncertain, but I think the key here is businesses have taken a step back. Here's the problem. This is how I look at it. If you take a picture of a guy when they're always talking about small businessman, I'm the guy. Okay. I'm that guy. I started a company in my garage 23 years ago with $500. I turned it into a multi-million-dollar revenue business annually, year after year after year after year. I exceeded $10 million in revenues in late 2006, and then I've now come all the way back to a lot less than that. But seen the whole cycle, done all those things, and here's what my perspective is. You cannot have a government continually alienate, eviscerate, berate the business community coming from the highest office in the land. Okay? I mean, my reaction as a small business person when I saw the government acting that way, the first thing I just said was, man, that could be me.
Yep.
That was my gut reaction. And for a person who believes that government doesn't really need to be involved really in my business, look, I'll pay my taxes, give me my services, build my roads, give me some police and fire. But otherwise than that, get out of the way, okay?
Yeah.
I don't need you to try and create jobs. You can't. You want to create jobs? Do what everybody's been telling you to do that you won't do. And that's cut the marginal tax rates. But they're not going to do that, so fine. You're not going to do it. So business says, fine, you're not going to do that. We're going to wait you out. We're going to sit on our cash. We're going to make this economy pretty crappy for you. We're not going to hire people. And until you start changing your tune about business, that's what we're going to do. And business is very clear. When they're unknown about their costs, they will tread slowly. They will grow slowly. They will figure out how to work within a system when uncertainties are in play. Hey, look, I've always said this to a lot of people. I have no idea if President Obama is anti-business or not. I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart or what's in his head. But I can tell you the policies that he is promoting are definitely anti-business. And the policies he has passed are definitely anti-business. So that's part of the problem is I'm not one of those media guys trying to figure out what guys are thinking. I just look at what they do. Well, look at what the guy says. When the guy said he wanted to redistribute the income, I believe him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think it's right, but I don't doubt him. You know?
Yeah. It would suit them to go back and study a little bit to see what did the Founding Fathers really intend when they tried to set this country up, and they did not, and they fought among themselves to make sure that there was never going to be a central, powerful government.
Of course, that was the one thing that they saw as complete failure of the European nations.
True.
Was the centralized planning, centralized power. And you're absolutely right. And of course, I'll tip my hat. This administration has done more at grabbing centralized power than any administration we've seen in the last 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
The power they've grabbed at and got is unbelievable. President fired a CEO. When does that happen? I mean, you know, government owns most of GM and almost all of AIG. Seems kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have bankruptcy laws in this country. I'm not quite sure why we didn't use them. Their whole design is orderly wind down of failing businesses.
Correct.
Not sure why why we chose now all of a sudden to say we'd like the government to pick winners and losers. I don't think that's what the Founding Fathers had in mind. What the Founding Fathers had in mind is let the free market decide. We don't care who you are. If you got a great product, the free market will let you know. I mean, how can you be any more equal than that? The free market does not care. White, brown, black, yellow, Chinese, Christian, Jewish, Mexican. The free market doesn't care. All the free market cares about is good product, good service.
Well, Greg Wiener, you are the CEO of QuickScrews, and we are firmly in your camp. We're glad your page is out there at www.quickscrews.com, and we hope folks are going to read it and take what you have to say to heart.
Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it and enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yeah, and so did we too, okay?
And we'll keep in touch with you, especially as November rolls around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun. Hope we get to do it again.
Consultant Frank Hurtte is coming up next, so stick around.
This is Sue Rice with the FCH team. It's my job to make sure that as an FCH member, you receive the highest possible benefit from your participation in the network. Did you know that once you're logged into FCH, you have access to exclusive search tools, site statistics, and tracking information about your inventory and source finder inquiries? It's all just a click away, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If it's time to refresh your inventory, don't worry. We'll run your listings through our scrubber software and get you up and running in a very short time. If you can attach a spreadsheet to an email, you can list inventory on FCH. We can also show you how to optimize your listings to attract the most hits for your type of fastener. Send email to Sue at fastenersclearinghouse.com and let me help you get the most from the FCH sourcing network. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
This is Don Shin from Solution Industries, home of Solution Man, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We're joined now by Frank Hurtte of River Heights Consulting. They're located in Davenport, Iowa. Frank, welcome to Fully Threaded.
Hey, thanks for inviting me on.
Frank, you and I started communicating just recently, and it was after I read a post on Fastener Talk, fastenerblog.net, and you were commenting about things that distributors should be doing in preparation for shows such as STAFTA, which is what the post was about, but no doubt you have a lot of other thoughts on how that same concept should apply to any other show, be it NIFS or any other show that a fastener distributor will be attending in the coming season. And I'll tell you, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but if you could, please share with our audience exactly what it is you do at River Heights Consulting, and we'll get into it after that.
Well, thanks, Eric. River Heights Consulting is a company that we founded in 2005. And the primary purpose of River Heights Consulting is to help build stronger distribution channels in what I call the knowledge-based distributor sector. And knowledge base means that you have to know something about your product in order to sell it. Now, I know that, that's one of the arguments that everyone has is, well, I know about my product and I'm really helping, but my competitors don't. But if you think about it, in the fastener world, the really successful people understand about their products. They help their customers select the right products. They look for problems. And every time someone buys a box or a pallet or maybe even a single fastener, along with it comes just a little bit of the knowledge that person brings to the sale. I'm the founding partner. We are an organization made up largely of people who have worked in distribution, although we do have a couple of college professors who wish they would have worked in distribution. So,
okay.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with trade shows, and particularly with distribution in trade shows.
The reason for my post, and thank you for reading it and appreciating it. Some people might actually call it a rant, because it's been an ongoing pet peeve of mine since I was a distributor many years ago. And you go to these meetings, and when you arrive, there are hundreds of other people who are the principals and the guys who are making things happen at other businesses just like yours all across the country. There's manufacturers who may or may not be aligned with you. There are consultants. There are all of these people. And one of the things that I observed when we got there is most people don't take any time to look at what's going to be covered in the meeting. They don't think about what they're going to talk to people about. And when you go to the cocktail parties and you think to yourself, boy, this is one of those times when we should be just harvesting information from one another left and right. You look around and what you see is people that are old friends, and they're talking about their golf game, and they're talking about all kinds of personal stuff, which hey, I believe you got to have a personal life too. But then all of a sudden they change from talking about personal stuff, and they launch into what's going to be their number one thing, about business. And they ask the person, well, geez, hey Frank, how's business? Which incidentally, asking that question it really kind of equates to that 1970s thing from the John Travolta movie of, hey baby, what's your sign? It doesn't mean anything. And I just got to thinking years ago, and this thought has just gone over and over in my mind, is what would happen if people prepared for the meetings? And I started helping some of my clients and some of my friends get prepared for the meeting and say, what should a person do? Well, I can tell you what I do when I go to meetings, and I go to a lot of them, and I found that literally every meeting that I go to, there are some people that I already know something about. What on the day or 2 days or a week before the meeting, I'll do anything in my power to get a copy of the people who are going to be at that meeting. And usually the associations are great about providing it. I go down the list, and I circle the names of people that I know, and I start thinking, last time I saw this person, he was thinking about opening a new branch, or last time I talked to this person, he was thinking about buying a new business system with new software, or this guy is really into to sales metrics. And I scribble a couple of notes there. And the other thing that I do a week ahead of time is I'll sit down with that list, and I'll just make a quick phone call. And usually I carry the notes in my car. The guy's phone number is usually there. I just give him a call and say, we're about ready to go to a meeting. I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. But wouldn't it be nice if we could say, let's meet at a specific time instead of leaving it to chance? Because you walk into one of these big convention halls and there's 400 people in there and there's noise going on and everybody's drinking. The chances of finding the people that you want to know really isn't there. So by making those phone calls, what I'll do is say, let's meet 10 minutes before the cocktail hour. Let's meet right before lunch, or let's meet right after lunch, and schedule some definite appointments with some of the people that I want to talk to. And they're not really fancy appointments. It's just like, we're just not going to leave this thing up to chance. We're going to spend 15 minutes together, and I'm going to think about the meaningful things that I want to ask them besides, hey, how's business going? So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm starting to rant, so forgive me, but it just really burns my craw when I go to some of these meetings, and there'll be 5 people from the same company. And I'll go to breakfast, and I'll see those same 5 people off in the corner sitting and talking to one another at a table by themselves. And then I'll come to lunch, and I'll see the same 5 people again sitting off at another table talking. And I just think to myself, golly gee, you work in the same office, you work for the same company. Wouldn't it be nice if you had your conversation someplace that didn't require an airplane trip to get there and didn't require a $250 a night hotel to have those conversations? Why don't you sit with someone else? Which brings me back to my list. I always carry that list kind of discreetly stuffed in a notebook. I sit down and I talk to someone that I've never met before, and I put a little X by their name and say, met them at lunch, this is what they look like, and this is some things they told me about their company. And it's incredible, the information that comes out of that, because a couple of days later you're thinking and go, this guy said that he was already doing the CRM system. I think I'll give him a call. And when you call him, it's incredible. The fact that you remembered you sat next to him at lunch, you describe yourself, you describe them, you talk about the meeting. And just by doing that, you create this gigantic network of more and more and more people that you can turn to and ask questions. And quite frankly, many times you can ask questions that there's no consultant in the world that can answer a question like the guy who's doing it himself. And when a manufacturer starts a new program, and for the manufacturers that are listening to this, please forgive me, but it is true. When distributors talk to manufacturers, it's almost always the same story. Well, golly gee, you're the only distributor that's really complained about this. So, it must not be that big of an issue for everyone else. Wouldn't it be nice if you could call a half a dozen of your friends in different parts of the country who maybe have businesses that are similar to yours and say, have you had this problem? It adds a whole lot of extra credibility to your conversation. And the last thing is, increasingly at these distributor conferences, there's time set aside for manufacturers and distributors to get together. And again, you go there and you see these conversations that are like, gee, how you doing? How's your golf game? Da-da-da-da. How's our guy taking care of you? Well, he's doing okay. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some credible conversation, some data, and say, something, we're up here and here and here, but we've really got a problem with your rep that's responsible for this problem because for some reason he doesn't seem to be as responsive as you are when I talk to you. When you go to meetings armed with information, both the manufacturer and the distributor, I was at one recently where each manufacturer and distributor was given 20 minutes to talk. And I was blown away at how little could be covered in 20 minutes when neither side was prepared, and how much could be discussed and how meaningful the discussion was when both sides were armed with data. They sat down and said, how you doing? I'm fine. How you doing? Okay. Yep. You're doing good. Okay. How's the wife? They're fine. Okay. Now here's the problems we have. Bang, bang, bang. And in 20 minutes, it was like a half a day discussion. action items were developed afterwards, and meaningful things took place.
Yeah, that's actually a really excellent format that allows for that sort of give and take. I mean, being prepared for it is obviously important, but the format in and of itself reminds me of the upcoming NFDA meeting that's happening in Chicago, I believe in September.
Do you use software, or how do you actually make sure you can keep track of all these little thoughts and connections to these people so that when you meet some of them, you have access to them, or on a phone or something like that? I mean, do you use special software to try and keep track of the connections and things?
Let me tell you, I'm kind of long in the tooth at 56. My career, and I actually started doing this before the computer power that we have today. I started off on paper. And, and just had a file of the people I knew. And basically what that file was the roster of previous meetings, for the past 3 or 4 years. And I just pulled information off of my handwritten notes. Today, I use Outlook. It is amazing the power that there is in a computer. It's amazing the note section. You can drop a couple of sentence notes, and it rings your chimes. It brings you back to what you want to talk about. And, it doesn't have to be complicated. I think that if a person had ACT or Goldmine or one of the more advanced CRM systems, it would be doubly easy. And entering the information in sounds more difficult than it is. Really and truly, you go to a meeting like this, if in the course of the meeting you might meet 30 people, and you're talking about one sentence for each person.
Right.
That jogs most people's memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's key to be able to recall this stuff, because that's what you're saying, is to make personal connections with people so you get over the wishy-washy, how's business or whatever, something else. What's the weather like in Davenport or Chicago or something?
I can tell you the weather in Davenport's always bad. We're located on the banks of the Mississippi and occasionally in the Mississippi.
Well, it's an interesting process that you've outlined, and it makes perfect sense. Like so much, it's really not that complicated. It's just that you need to do it to get maximum efficiency. And, on that subject, I was perusing some of the articles that you have available on your website, and that's at www.riverheightsconsulting.com. And there's a treasure trove of information out there. And you're a guy who is all about the process in terms of distribution, aren't you?
I sure am. I'm really about if you think about what I just described and going to distributor meetings, it's a process. It's not a perfect process, but it's my process. And I really do believe that the same thing holds true with distributors. We have an issue, and here is the issue as I see it. Distributors are largely sales companies. But if we contrast ourselves as sales companies against, say, the people that are selling pharmaceuticals, or the people that are selling business systems, or the people that are selling office supplies even, our sales process just absolutely stinks. And I always like to tell people a story. I grew up in a small town, and in the small town there's a hamburger place there that just happened to have started in the same year as McDonald's. And you look and go, okay, well, what does that have to do with anything, Frank? Well, here's what it has to do with. This little place called Bill's Toasty Shop started at the same time as McDonald's with 12 seats. And over the course of the last 75 years, they've managed to maintain 11 of those seats in the place. And at the same time, McDonald's, the little stand that the McDonald's brothers started, now serves 47 million people a day. And you wonder, what in the world is the difference? Well, I can tell you that it isn't the high quality people that they hire, because McDonald's has just absolutely prospered using some of the lowest skilled workers in the world. It's not the brain power of the owners, because Bill's Toasty Shop in its history has been owned by a string of lawyers and doctors and so forth. But it's all about process. I can go to McDonald's in downtown Des Moines, downtown Dubai, or downtown anywhere, and when you walk in the door, you can order a French fry and assume that the French fry is going to taste nearly the same as the French fry someplace else. You can go into the restroom and assume that the restroom's going to be clean. Now, if you contrast that with Bill's Toasty Shop, on the other hand, everyone in this small town knows that if they go into the place at 11 o'clock at night and they happen to see a lady named Olive that works there, they know that she couldn't make a French fry if her life depended on it. And so all the natives, they pick that as the time to get the bag of chips with their hamburger. And I've had times when taken friends from out of town, I said, you got to come and see this place. It's like a trip back in history. And we've gone there, and I see that the hamburger is cooked exactly the opposite of the last time I was there. They have no process. McDonald's, on the other hand, has a book that's 18 inches thick that's dedicated to French fries. Everything about how a French fry is cooked, everything about how a French fry is served, everything about how long it's stored, and it's left to the person. And so you think about it and say, what's that have to do with wholesale distribution? Well, here's a thought about wholesale distribution. Every distributor that's still in business probably has a process around accounts receivable. If they don't, they probably already gone out of business. They probably have a process around accounts payable. They probably have a process about how they receive and ship goods. But the only thing that's missing is a process around sales. And I keep going, well, okay, there's a process around sales. But when you talk to distributors and the sales managers, they go, yes, Frank, we have a process, but it's informal, and every salesperson does it his way. But since they've been doing it their way for 15 years, they really have their own process. Well, you look at that and go, that really isn't the case, because what would happen if you went into McDonald's and said, I'm going to be your new French fry cook, but I have my own way of doing it. I've been doing it for 15 years. They'd go, no, that's not the way we do it. If your way is better, show us and we'll incorporate it into the process for everywhere. But if your way, if you're not going to follow the process, then you can't be here. And distributors haven't gotten to that point. They've convinced themselves that it doesn't make sense. And they almost convinced me that it doesn't make sense until I happened to read some research that came out from a company called CSO Insights. And you can Google search CSO Insights. They sell studies. They went out and talked to over 1,000 different companies in a whole lot of different industries, and wholesale distribution was just one of those industries, and asked the sales manager a set of questions. And the questions were in regards to how defined and how rigid is your sales process. They came back to those same companies and asked them, how do your customers think of you? And what they found was the more rigid, the more developed, the more dynamic the sales process, the higher the vision the customers have of them as a company. And so what does all that have to do with selling? Well, the higher the vision the customers have, the greater the chance of making economic goals, the greater the chance of closing orders, whether they be project related or ongoing related. If the customer thinks of you as being a value, almost a strategic partner, then you just don't lose the orders like they do if they think, well, they're another one of our vendors. One of the other things that always comes up is, okay, this whole thing of sales, and I've had people actually come to me with giant graph paper that had like a flow chart of all the things that they thought they were going to do in their sales process, and it was just so big and so expansive that they couldn't attack it. And you'd think to yourself, whenever you've got a big job, what you have to do is you have to break it into small parts, and you have to tackle the small parts one at a time. I personally believe that if a person is going to set a sales process in place, if a wholesale distributor is going to set a sales process in place, one of the first things that they need to do is they need to spend some time thinking about how they target customers and how they target what they're going to sell to customers. And you're probably wondering, well, why would you want to do this? Well, there's two reasons for it. First of all, most of the distributor associations use a company out in Colorado that's headed by Dr. Al Bates, who is just a financial wizard in terms of looking at distributor fundamentals. They have profit reports, which is a benchmarking report that shows how distributors that report their data into him, anonymously, and then he wraps all that data and says, this is how the industry looks. This is one of the observations that those folks have made. The average distributor has about 20% of the customers who produce 80% of the revenue. Another 30% are break even, and the following 50% actually cost the distributor money. And if you don't have a plan for how you're going to select the right customers to sell to and the right products to sell to that right group, then what you're doing as you expand your business is you're just continuing that model and continuing to add customers who make you money, who allow you to break even, and customers that cost you money. And the targeting process eliminates some of those customers that aren't profitable. And what's more is that, again, according to research not from our organization, but from research from another organization, shows that companies who are very, very specific in describing who their customers should be, who their ideal customer should be, what the products that they should sell to those ideal customers, are 47% more effective at reaching their financial goals. And believe me, I watched that cartoon when I was a little kid about the rabbit and the hare, and know that it's okay to give the rabbit a little bit of a head start, but I'm not sure that you really want to give anybody a 47% head start over you. It's just too much of an advantage to lose.
Wow, that's
the story of my childhood and business all rolled into one.
What sector of distribution was the 47%? Where was that extracted?
That information was actually extracted from over 2,000 businesses in all different industries, not just in wholesale distribution. But surprisingly, that number remained relatively similar from industry to industry, whether we're talking about financial business, whether we're talking about the retail,
right,
whatever. The more closely you can define your customer base, the more successful.
I suppose we could spend probably a long while discussing how you could actually go about developing a targeting strategy.
We could stay here till next Tuesday and talk about that. This will be my time for a little plug. I am right now in the final stages of my third book, and my third book is called The Target-Driven Sales Process. And anyone who's interested can also find us on LinkedIn, because we have a group called Target-Driven Distributor Sales. And what we've tried to do is create a grouping of people who are like-minded distributors who use targeting in one way, shape, form, or another. And it's not full of advertisements from me. It's basically full of people asking questions about what they can do. And that's Target-Driven Distributor Sales on LinkedIn.
So, Frank, using all the things you've just said, which seems to make a lot of sense to me, it means that as the business climate turns a bit tougher, then you really have to be very careful to make sure that, based on your comments, that you have to start really addressing those customers that are the ones who are the 20% who are making you money, and working out how, when you get new customers, they're not going to fall into the list of the ones who actually cost you money.
You betcha. I watched this, not this recession, but the recession back in 2002. I remember watching a little snippet of Neil Rackham, who wrote Spin Selling, on one of these computer videos. And I think that he said it better than anyone that I've ever heard. And he was talking about, okay, we're going into a recession. What's the mistake that most businesses make? And he said, and I wish I could say it like him, the man that chases two monkeys probably won't catch either.
Yeah.
And here's the deal on targeting. Most businesses, when times turn tough, instead of saying, let's sit down and spend just a little bit of time thinking about who are going to be the profitable guys, who are going to be the people who can bring to our bottom line. And instead, what they do is they go into this panic mode and they start chasing after all kinds of businesses. And this is what happens. They chase after more and more, and the faster they run, the further behind they get, until all of a sudden they find that somebody else was able to target their good customer and pull it away, and then that spells absolute disaster.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
That sounds like something to avoid at any point, not just during a recession.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Well, I think we've got our takeaway, Frank, and that's a very apropos way to bring it to a conclusion. Can you refresh my memory? What is the name of the LinkedIn group that you're operating in?
The LinkedIn group is Target Driven Distributor Sales.
Okay, great. There's also a flourishing group out there, fasteners industry, and we participate in that quite a bit. So we've always got our ears open for other ways to implement LinkedIn. And your website is www.riverheightsconsulting.com, and listeners can get in touch with you that way. Isn't that right?
That is correct. My phone number's on there. Feel free to give me a call anytime. Not only do I like to do business, but I like the people who do business.
Outstanding. Well, Frank, appreciate you being with us.
Hey, thank you. It's been my pleasure, and so long to all my friends out there in Radio Land.
There's more Fully Threaded coming up next. Stick around.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
This is Chris from Hudson Fasteners, Fastener News at Twitter, and Fascinating Domains. And you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric, back with you.
Fully Threaded.
Boy, what a couple of great guests. Frank, I tell you, he had so much to say, and we just simply didn't have enough time. We're definitely going to have him back, Brian.
Yeah, he makes some great points, and they relate really to don't waste your time. Make the most out of your time when you're dealing with other people. And he's a very organized person, and shows.
He had a lot of things that we didn't get to, like I said, and, we'll invite him back.
Yeah, he makes some really, really good points. And his commentary on people at fastener shows is really quite, I think it's true.
Well, you see a lot of people that probably could be doing things a little bit more effectively, and I think that's true of everybody. It's good to hear those kinds of reminders, and you definitely get out of those shows what you put in.
Yeah, that's true. And a part of it is that there's a lot of social networking, which is not necessarily doing business, but it really is seeing people you've known for years. So you can't always be doing business continuously.
True. And then, of course, our conversation with Greg Wiener, that was, what can you say? It was a departure, huh?
Right, yeah, we're sort of stuck away from that area intentionally for a while, I would say.
That's right. Well, the thing is, I had the opportunity, this is going back about 15 years ago, but I had the chance to listen to a lecture by M. Scott Peck. He was the author of the famous book, it's kind of a classic now, but it was The Road Less Traveled. Anyway, He was a psychologist, and he had a lot of good things to say about a lot of different subjects. And in this lecture, he said something that always stuck with me, and that was, you can't talk about anything without talking about everything. And what he really meant was addressing any subject with integrity. And, we do a lot of talking about the market and the industry and the economy and so forth in the show in Fully Threaded. And it really does a disservice, I think, to everybody if we don't actually look at some of the root causes here. And Greg's points are very well taken.
Yeah, it's true. And for us, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the corner that we try and avoid mentioning, I guess.
Well, no more.
The shroud has been ripped off the 800-pound gorilla.
Well, look, this is not a political show, and we're not going to change the format dramatically, but we do want to make it clear. We support freedom, we support a free economy, and it is a grave situation right now, in our opinion. If you look right now on the fullythreaded.com website, you'll see a new banner, and it's a moniker I hope others in the industry will take up, and it's "Don't Thread on Me." And it's a twist on the old Gadsden flag, of course, is what it is. But I hope that what people will take away from it is one simple message, and that is that the time to really defer to malicious attacks against the economy is over. We just don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. And what it really takes is for all of us to stand up, and for the people who share this view to really let each other know that we're not afraid to acknowledge something that we all know. Well, that's the soapbox portion of the show, folks, but it is a serious issue.
Right, it is.
And you can certainly let us know what you think about it, and we hope you will, by emailing us at ftr@fullythreaded.com. That's our email address, and please do let us know how we're doing.
Right, and remember, at the Fully Threaded page, you can click on the button on the right, and it will add the Fully Threaded set of podcasts into your iPod or your iPhone, okay? And then you can listen to them at your own pleasure.
That's right. We appreciate everybody who's subscribed so far, and we look forward to seeing that number increase.
Right.
And now back to our regularly scheduled programming matter.
Oh, what would be regularly scheduled about our programming?
Well, we mentioned at the top of the show that a Gallup poll had come out recently that has some relevance to the fastener industry. And indeed, earlier this week, you might have seen the headline. A Gallup poll came out, headline, U.S. drinking rate edges up slightly to 25-year high. And you can see this at Gallup.com. Opening paragraph says 67% of U.S. adults drink alcohol, a slight increase over last year, and the highest reading recorded since 1985 by 1 percentage point. Beer remains the favorite beverage among drinkers. Interesting stuff, huh?
Right. Actually, the more interesting thing about this graph is how relatively constant the rate of drinking really has been since about 1939. I mean, it goes up and down, but it's within 10%, between 60 and 70%. It's sort of pretty amazing, really.
Well, when you drill into the report, something that is not too surprising, but it bears pointing out, in the age bracket of 18 to 54, 72% of the respondents claim that they're drinkers, while as 55 and older, only 59% claim that they drink alcohol.
The problem is they probably forgot that they did, okay? But I don't think I'm not going to put too much credence on these figures because pretty soon they're all going to be obsolete anyway.
And why is that?
Well, because of the travelling salesman's new brew and the new pub crawl introduced in this year's NIFS Las Vegas, all the numbers are going to fall like proverbial 100 bottles of beer off the wall.
Oh, brother. Oh, point taken. Well, that puts episode 9 in the can. For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fasteners Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?